pinchy and zappy show tonight, to be honest with you. Anyway, let me start by finding the show notes and doing an intro, because I really do need to do an intro. There's the folder. Bear with me. Fantastic. This is Dave and Mecky's Platos Cave on WZZR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's home to fresh, unfiltered ideas and conversations that you'll find in the chat room where I am right now. And the website's also a tremendous place to get your merch. Now, if I'd remembered to count all these shows, well, then I could give you a show number. But this is the 24th of August, 2023. Did you know that you can catch us on air, online, and anywhere on your smart device, or you just grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio, which is really cool. I don't think you know that it's free to access the archives at the station, and you can jump in there and download any file. They're all dated underneath the show title, so that you can guarantee yourself an MP3 binge fest of your favourite hosts. And if you don't know who any of them are, you can actually give them a little trial. Some people binge our show, which is appreciated. Thank you. One of our two brands that we do. And you know what? I think this day and age is all about binging. Didn't it start with the TiVo, where you could just binge all your pre-recorded shows and skip the ads and do all those things? I think it started there, and then over here it became Foxtel or cable, that you could do the same thing on with the internal device that recorded all those cable shows. But now, I mean, the stations themselves offer the ability to log into them and watch any of their shows. Just watch whenever you want. You don't have to you download as you watch them, I suppose, but you don't have to record them and set up your own tech. You're just using their tech, and they get some really cool figures from that. Because of that, they get some big data. They can, if you had to answer any questions to make a login, then they can do a few things. If you've got a number of accounts, then they get to see who you are, what kind of family you have. If you have any under 18s that you've got to set up for those logins, they can see how many, basically your children, not who they are, but you can see how many of them that you're allowing to watch these streaming platforms. It doesn't matter whether it's a paid platform or a free platform, or it's simply just the station's platform. Or here we have the ABC, which is Australian Broadcasting Commission, for example, and they have a product called iView. So they have an app, and they have a website that you can go through, which is really cool. The app works both on the TV and the phones and the tablets and things like that. And the ABC Listen app, which is really cool. This is not an advertising for them, but take it as you will. And those things are really cool. So it's very hard to schedule any day these days, around a TV show being broadcast live, or a radio program being broadcast live. So that's what these archives for. That's what these platforms are for. Jump in and dip your toe into someone else's show, metaphorically speaking, and have a listen. And if you like someone else's show, do that. Listen. And look, if you learn anything on our show, for that matter, and you've in amongst your friends, that you might have learned something that becomes a point of conversation. So do remember to say, I learnt that on Revolution Radio, or I learnt that on Dave and Mecky's show. And spread the word, because donating to the station will keep it alive. You can just buy merch from the station, and that'll keep it alive. Tell someone, if you can't buy anything, tell someone else about it. Tell someone else about the lovely show that you adore, that you can't stop listening to. Tell them about that. Spread the word, and expand the user base, because some of those people might be able to contribute other than just listening. Now, we asked that, and the station asked, that if you were happy about anything, if you learned something, do take the time to donate. Now, we don't get paid. The money is going directly to the running of the station. So the cloud servers aren't free. They cost money. All the licensing costs money. So, you are supporting us, you're supporting the station and all the other hosts. Without the platform, and I think we've been here, this is the 11th year, and thank you to all of those people who have donated towards the station or contributed in some way, whether it's financially or just being a host. Thank you to you, and my hat goes off, and well, I will always respect Nighthawk for putting this platform together. Now, like I said, it's free to access the archives, so do so, and you're going to understand how much I've learnt about where I live. I live in Darkinjung country. Yes, I live in Australia. Yes, that makes sense. But you know what else? Not only do I live in Australia, but I know the people that lived. Australia was cut up into hundreds of little pockets of nations, of people that lived here before. And so the Australian Aboriginal people, where I live, their mob, their region was called the Darkinjung. Now, Meki lives in a beautiful downtown Pemulwuy, which is near one of Australia's largest freshwater water sources. That's not, I suppose, not dam really. It's a reservoir. And here's where the Daruk people live. And they had a very large swath. The Darkinjung country is where the national foot highway, the walking tracks, were that spread from Sydney northward. So most of the terrain was hideous, and we occupied the Darkinjung. Actually has the original landing of Biami and his 3 sons, who started humans, and that same story, although it is the original story, that same story is the same kind of story that you hear about a man and 3 sons all around the world, in Northern Europe, for instance. But you hear them in lots of places. It's extraordinary that they should share that. And the what's called the message stick, it emanates from this area. So when a message is broadcast, it's there's a stick involved, and you've got to walk the stick and tell the story, and the message is on it. But there was lots of different languages, so the people would pass it on, and the neighbours knew each other's language, but it didn't go too far beyond those walls. So even though there's no physical walls, the barriers or the regions they lived in. There was also something amazing about when teenagers start to question everything your parents teach you as a teenager, then they would send them walking, and it was called walkabout. And this was a time in a teenager's life where they would question everything and just disbelieve it all. Oh, because you're my parents, right? What do you know? I know more than you. I know I'm better than you. And to save the fuss of argument, send it to another town. They would believe those persons, even though they had the same message. More readily believe them, understand that this is kind of universal, and then eventually come back or not. Didn't matter. They could marry into the other town, or or come back. So anyway, because of that, Meki and we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, where there is no treaty in this country. We just stole it. Actually, we declared that there was the Aboriginals themselves were declared at the time, 200 years ago, as being fauna, and because they didn't have any permanent buildings or anything, it was such a shame that they were treated like they were. Anyway, so We pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. Okay, so I'm going to start anyway because Meki's not contactable for some reason. I can see him there now. Let me see if I can bring him in, but he must have been having some computer problems. It says active now. Let me see. Takes a bit of a... The Skype version I've got is just atrocious. Oh, he should be able to come in. He's been invited. Obviously, he's got some problems. He hasn't messaged me. Maybe he has. Hang on, let me just test. Nope, he hasn't texted me or anything, but he's invited in to here, so... yeah, all right. Well, we'll see. Anyway, I wanted to bring up some stories. So one of the stories that I saw today, which became confirmed on the BBC.com website, which was Prigozhin has been killed in a plane crash. And it's a leased plane that looks kind of like, I think it's called a Skymaster or something. It looks kind of like a Learjet. And it's crashed, killing, I think there was 4 passengers. But it's a private plane, right? It's leased. So I suppose it's a little bit more trustworthy, and the people you're going to travel with would be known to you. So kind of makes a difference, I think. And it's 2 months to the day that he was rolling his Wagner band towards Moscow. To the day. And he's made several flights, and there was actually a website available where you could track the plane. So it wasn't a secret that they were leasing this plane out. And you've got to ask the question: why did the plane crash? Was it hit with a missile? Was there mechanical failure? In some way, did they run out of fuel? Was it human error? Was there, explosives on board? Don't know any of those questions. Sorry, I know the question, not the answers. So, was he taken out? For whatever reason, the plane crashed. It did crash, and it was a fiery mess, and there was no survivors. So, is it possible that this was KGB? I don't know. Some say the KGB doesn't exist anymore. I'd probably say it does. I'm not going to dispute them. I think every country in the world has operatives that are, controlled by the government and given commands, and that whole Bourne identity thing is kind of real. Maybe it just touches on, a bit of fantasy in between, but it's probably completely real. And can they take out their own people? Sure, why not? Would you put it past anybody? Would you? Oh, okay, yes. Thank you, Canon Sanders. So, I don't know. I knew about the BRICS group, and I'll talk about that a bit later. So, I raised the question, why did the plane crash? And if you want to follow money or control or retribution, or simply the plane was leased, there was very little maintenance on it, I don't know. I hope that we find out, but I don't think we are. The plane was so destroyed that unless someone owns up to causing it, then it's probably going to be unlikely we find out any more details to that. Now, oh, that's right. That was the other thing I saw today. Thanks for that. That there was 100 million views on Tucker's channel with his Trump interview. I saw the promo for that, but I didn't go too much further in that. The other story is that's all put together in this lovely piece, which was it says the Ukraine is running out of fighters. They've lost quite a few vehicles and troops in these last lots of offensives. So certainly way fewer than Russia, but I wonder where that's going to go. And I saw there was an announcement this morning about BRICS. So BRICS, and I can't for the life of me remember every one of the countries that's signing up to this. And this is China's new currency, this digital currency that they're putting together, and to trade in that rather than US dollars. And there's so many countries in it now, and I'm really kind of surprised that India is there. But I think India is probably only doing it for the money, the sales that they're going to earn by being part of it. And the West is so unlikely to do it. So if you have BRICS, and then you have the US dollar team, let's call it what it is. Imagine there's just two teams on the planet. Now, will the next conflict be over which digital currency should there be on the planet? Because I think I spoke last time about China having $400 billion in defaults, and Evergreen, I think, was there. That's the one, Evergrande, whatever it's called, the builder, developer that went under. There's the second one now, the second biggest, has defaulted, hasn't made a payment since January, and then one of their banks, I forget the name of the bank as well, that's not been paid for any of those loans that it handed out. So the companies have gone under without turning profit and can't repay their debt. And then the bank that held the debt is also going under because, hey, you trusted them, but they're skint. They got nothing. It's like Enron, right? There was a lot of money there. There was a lot of money potential. But unless that pipeline went ahead, they were going to fold. Enron was going to fold. And we did a show on that as well. We talked about that. So this is the kind of the thing. Remember that if you borrow $1 million from the bank, it's on you. You borrow $1 billion, that's on the bank. How is anyone ever going to pay that back? Just how? So your entire business is, and the bank itself is then responsible for that debt. You think about it. So if you've I don't want to suggest performing fraud in any way, but if you just go by those rules, and up to $1 million, it's on you. $1 billion is on the bank, and they'll lend that to anyone, but they'll only lend it to people who have a business idea that looks like it's going to make them money. And here we go at the same point about making money. Australian banks make obscene amounts of money given the population base. And we have what's called the Big Four, and they're all mad profiters, right? They profiteering. They profit like there's no tomorrow. And even when the economy's bad, they make more money than they would if the economy was good. It's really bizarre because that's so that they don't fold. They've got to make money. They've got to profit. They've got to have that their ability to do it. But you might have heard there's been a couple of things to do with banks in Australia that there's now a limit to the amount of cash that you can use for a single transaction outside of the banking system. You can only take out so much cash. It used to be like a cashier's check, or here we have similar, where it's pre-authorized. All you do is present it at your bank and it's immediate, right? That's as good as cash. But even so, they don't want large denomination money transfers between people. They want it to all be digital. You got this thing with the phones now. You can set up, I'm going to pay you to your mobile phone number. And the bank where you've registered and had the app, you've got your mobile phone number, and it's a way of transmitting money now. It's just crazy what there is. Anyway, so you think every one of these little tiny changes, little baby step changes that we're seeing all around the planet. Some are testing, some are a little ahead of others, some are a little behind in others, doing different kinds of things. And each of us, we're all piloting something just a little different from each other. And every one of them is working towards the same goal, and that's the Great Reset, full world digital currency. And I kind of think it's going to be super quick now. It's going to be upon us before we realize, and we're going to beg for it. It was the same thing that Mackie and I were talking about. Say you've got, I still don't know where Mackie went. I hope he's rebooting or doing something. If you're listening, Mackie, could you please SMS me and let me know everything's okay? Because, yeah, nothing. I got crickets. And I don't know. I just don't know what to do about bringing him in. I saw he was online before. He's not anymore. Let me see. Nope. No, he's still not around. Okay, so the little tiny things that they're planning around in the state that I'm in Australia, which is called New South Wales. There was a trial during COVID where the government would give you a voucher for a certain denomination of money, like $50, right? $50, give you $50, and to help in the recovery of our service industry. So whether it was a restaurant, some kind of entertainment, like went to the movies or something, you could spend it at a bar if you wanted. It didn't matter, as long as you went out and got social and supported local industry anywhere, like local businesses. So they give $50, but it had an expiration date on it. So for us, I think it lasted 6 months. Good trial. Nearing the end of it, they saw a bigger spend because people just sat on and didn't do anything immediately, and then realized, I've got that $50, I can spend that. So we took the family out. We had 2 adults, 2 kids, and we went to a pub that has not counter meals. It's called the Eleanora Hotel. It's very good. The food is tremendous. It's very pricey. Very pricey for, not for what it is. It's very pricey for a pub meal, but it's delicious, and the portions are huge, and it's always completely packed, and you have to book. And if you've got to book somewhere on the Central Coast that isn't McDonald's, which I'm only joking, then it's got to be good, right? So anyway, we went there and spent the money, and it was at the point when I was spending the money, I had this realization: oh my God, they've got to be trialing this. This has got to be one of those things. It's got to be that digital currency that expires on you. So you've got to spend it. You can't save it. Wouldn't that be a thing, right? So then I started looking around. Well, what else is there around the world where they're trying to fix the climate and cut towns up into like pizza shapes? So not pizza shapes. That's a biscuit product. Into the slices of a pizza. So in England, they're trialing that. I think Oxford, and they've decided that you're going to be limited to a certain amount of travel distance per year, and if you exceed it, there's fines. You've got to pay a toll, which is a fine, effectively. They're trying to limit you where you go. And you can't travel outside of your zone. And you've only got so many travels outside your zone before then you are no longer allowed to travel outside your zone. So why are they doing that? In an effort to reduce the carbon emissions. Okay. All right. Well, let's do that. Let's do that then. So wait till that comes to your town. Is what I'm saying, Mickey and I discussed it, and we gave other examples of all these things that can be found around the world in different places. So in Australia, we've got limiting the amount of cash you can take out. You just can't take that much cash out of the bank. You're not allowed to transact anything. I think it's $10,000 to start, and I think it's been reduced. You can't buy anything. You can't go in a car dealership and buy something cash for $11,000. Just not allowed. It's now too large a denomination of cash to spend somewhere. It's got to be electronic transaction. That means they can track it. Everything's traceable when you start using digital. There won't be much room for being able to use printed money going forward. In fact, the strangest thing was said by our government in Australia when the Queen passed away and the King was to go onto the currency. The darndest thing, you'd be surprised. They said, well, what's the point? Yeah, because of the life cycle of the currency. And they didn't finish the sentence. It was almost like they said a whole sentence. But they didn't. What they didn't say was, well, what they did say was basically, if you read between the lines, it was, what's the point of changing the currency if by the end of the current cycle of notes, we'll be in digital currency? That's all they missed at the end. Because it doesn't make any sense. You know, the Queen's there. They go, we'll leave the Queen there for a while. Why? Why we have a king now then, right? So maybe they didn't want to go through the cost of changing it over. That's viable. Why not? You changed it every other time. Every year there's kind of like a new note or some improvement, or they do something to it. Because, you know, our denominations are sized by the value. So the smallest note we have is a 5. Then we have a 10, a 20, a 50, and a 100. And the 100's the largest of all of them. And they go down in size to the 5. So if you had a way of, if you were, say you were hard of seeing, you couldn't see, you're blind, maybe effectively blind or medically blind, or clinically blind, I don't know what the term is. Let's say just hard of seeing. And if you had a little template that you could put the money against without, because there's no way of telling otherwise that they're plastic money, right? So if you put it down on a template, you could see by comparison what denomination it was. Yeah, I mean, see, you could feel. And you'd be able to discern which numerical value it was of the ones that are available. Yeah, that's pretty cool. You know, they introduced some new tech into it. It's all good. Then digital currency kind of came, and you know the WEF said, "Oh, you can play with it." The World Economic Forum, you play with it for a while, and you work out the bugs, the wrinkles, and now they're going live. They're just doing a thing. So they're saying, "Well, I think time's up now for printed cash, for printed currency. You don't get paid in cash, well, some people do. But if we can eliminate that, then we can see where everyone spends their money. And if it turns out that everyone spent their money, you know, buying drugs somewhere, that'll be immediately obvious. Who is selling it? Where does the money go? As money is transferred up the chain to the people at the top. It all makes total sense about why they want to do it. But I mean, I still fail to see the logic in waiting all that time to try and bust those people. Because all you have to do is make it legal. Then they'll have no business. Does it make sense? You know, I would prefer that all the young kids out there don't make the last decision of their life to take something that they've purchased and consume it only for it to be the last thing that they did. I would prefer that if because there's no real dosage in any of that stuff. I'm not condoning drugs, not at all. Just say, for those hapless children that are going to make that choice at some point in their life, now children later in their teens, possibly at college, I really don't mind where that is in that chain. But if they do, I don't want it to be their last. So if you're not going to, for the first time ever, have some aspirin or paracetamol unless you're extremely allergic to it. You're not going to have a reaction, and it's dosed properly. There's instructions on the packet. It's all tested, and you're unlikely to get something different from the packet that's in the bubble pack, and you've got to pop it out to consume it. If that was all the way that drugs were being, manufactured by Big Pharma, I would be in agreement with that. Because at the moment, making it, like prohibition, it's illegal, then all you end up with is people making in the backyards or in their garages, right? Like Breaking Bad or whatever. And they're doing this thing, and the next person that gets some of it to sell wants to sell a larger quantity than they have, so they break it down, they add other chemicals, it becomes not the same thing anymore. So I feel sorry for those people who have lost someone due to the last choice they made was the wrong one. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be safe. There are things we can do which can make it safe for those, the young ones, and it can be a better world. It just totally can be. And sure, if even if they put controls over it, right? So you can only buy it from a chemist rather than a dispensary, and they get a cut. They stay alive that way. But however you can imagine it working, if that was the way it was going to go, then great. You have say for instance you've got beer manufacturers that are huge, say monolithic companies that span across the globe and sell their product, but you've got little tiny boutique companies selling, maybe more flavoursome, or it's got something different than the big manufacturers are willing to make. I think there's value in all of those chains, as long as there are controls to make it safe. So I say all that because I still think that is part of the conversation of the WEF's Great Reset. I strongly believe that. Because once you can track and trace everything, and all of those, let's say, illegal companies get drowned out by there being legal entities selling the same thing, how can they compete? I don't think they can. And then there'd be controls over who can, age restrictions, even the money that I think America has learned from just selling weed legally in a lot of states. I can't say all of them, but most. That's gone. The taxes have gone to improving the health and well-being of the people in those states. Can't we do that? Isn't there a way forward to do that? I'm sure there is. So, if you're listening to this and you're in America, God bless you. Good morning. I think it would be 7:36 a.m. Eastern. It's probably a lot earlier in California. I think maybe 2 or 3 hours earlier. Depends on the time zones. And I've got to say, I hope it's a great day for you today. Not every day that I work in the corporate factory. Not every single day is good. Some are better than others. You want to have achievements, and you want to do good, and you want other people to see that your effort is there, and you're trying, and that you make good results. That's what it's not always like that, but that's what you really want every day to be. You've got a boss that thinks you're awesome and you do good work. So it's tough. It's really tough. I got a call today from a friend of mine that I haven't heard from for a long time. Good friend. He's got a young family now, which is tremendous. And he was telling me today how much his life has turned around as a result of having new values in life. Because when you're, I'll put it this way. So you don't have a young family, but you're a young person, right? What goals? Yeah, where are those goals? I don't know. Maybe they're just different. Maybe it's earn enough money to go drinking with your friends down the pub. Could be. Could be pursuing miniature painting miniatures in D&D, or what was that? Orcs versus humans. You might just paint those little minifigures. You might drive online and race online like I do. That's a silly profession, but it's good. I get to race against the well-known race car drivers in the world. You might be a really good sketch artist. You might do landscapes or portraits. You might be a photographer. You might have music that you make. You might just be someone who can balance books, and you know what? That's really good too. Everyone has value. There's value somewhere. There's value everywhere. Everyone even sometimes doesn't know the value they can provide to their community, or or the planet for that matter. And there are things that maybe you don't know that you've got. You don't know the skill you have. Maybe someone else saw a skill in you and employed you in somewhere where you really didn't think you'd even fit in, but now you're like the champion there. You're 10 years in, and everyone comes to you, right? Maybe you turn out tremendous. Maybe someone trusted you. Maybe someone, saw more in you than you knew you had. They're those proud moments that you can shine and reflect back on. They're amazing. No one can take those away from you. And I think endlessly about all of these things, and how the world today might look different in, say, let's just call it 5 years from now. Not specifically 5 years, but if there's the goals we've got to get through to get to 5 years, great. If there's catastrophes, then so be it, right? You can't stop a catastrophe. But if there was anything that was in the next 5 years or more, then can you make it your best? Can you be your best? Can you be you present in your own life? Can you be there in the moment? All of those tremendous positive words that you might hear people talk about when it comes to, before I'd even just throw life away. It didn't even matter. Not someone else's, just my own. I just abandoned it. I was never really holding on to the reins, right? Life was just happening, and I was just doing things in it, almost like an NPC, a non-playable character in a video game. I was just there. I was like I was watching through someone else's eyes. These are all kind of terms and phrases you might hear people talk about. But it's so good once you realize that, like, two things. You have a purpose. There is purpose. You've got goals. You can set goals. And I don't mean, I'm going to, not bucket list things that are impossible. I'm going to climb Everest. I don't want to climb Everest. I mean, being able to split up a bunch of tasks into smaller tasks that are achievable, and that each one of those gets you towards a goal. Don't have to set a timeline. You just have to know that I've done this bit. Now that sets me up for doing this bit. Then I do that one, and then I can do the next one. And each one of those is that little bit of pleasure you get when you finally get to the end and you've achieved the thing you wanted. And however you understood what I just said, and you've played it back for yourself, then, if you're in the chat room, tell me how you've being able to, what was it, something in your life you didn't think that you were good at, or something like that, and someone else saw that you had it, and that you didn't know that you had. Right? Do that, because for me, I've got to say, it was in the early days, programming. I didn't know I could program. I didn't think I was good at math, and it turned out I was all right. And I did computers, and I did a couple of semesters in the same semester. I did extra credit, topped the class, and I didn't even have a computer. And that was great. And then I went on to write the first game anywhere. This was on a mainframe between two people playing in the same game. It wasn't possible. There was no communication method between terminals that would allow this to occur. But I wrote it, and I was nearly fired for it because that wasn't my job. But I was just sitting around caretaker for 12 hours on shift, doing nothing, when everything was already done on shift in the computer room. So you just sat there like, instead of employing a security guard, you had one of the people there in case, needed to do some jobs or whatever. So I did that. I spent a couple of, probably about 6 weeks, I think, of weekends. And I wrote, 6,000 lines of code or something. And I wrote this thing, and it was awesome. Worked a complete treat. Playing people overseas via a 28 baud modem. Dialed up between. It was just crazy. It was crazy old days. But that was in the 80s, and no one had done it before then. You could play the computer, or I even made a version of mine where the computer could play the computer, so I could make it fight itself. That was really cool. And I didn't know I could do it. All I wanted to do was, I just wanted to be an electrician, because I found that so easy. And my parents went, you know what, I'm going to send you to America, and you can go to school over there, and you can learn, and we'll see what happens next. So I was billeted over there in Southern California, Anaheim Hills, quite lucky to be there. And they were my parents' friends that lived there then at the time. And that was really cool. I had my BMX. People were driving. I was old enough. I didn't have a license in America, but I didn't have a license in Australia, so that's all I could do. So I rode my push bike, and I was doing tricks and things that they couldn't do, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Geez, I had fun, I'm going to tell you. But the car park at Canyon High was so full of cars. I was like, wow, how big is this school? Because we were too young to drive cars in Australia. Our 16 and 9 months or something like that was the first. That's where you get your L plates, your learner plates, and you can only drive with a licensed driver in your passenger seat as an instructor. And then you go to your Ps, and in those days there was only red Ps, and you had to stay on those, I think, for a year. And then you went to your full license. And in America, they were, everyone in America knows, but they had a driver's ed, and they had 16 years, and you could just get a license. So, yeah, that was crazy. So the amount of cars in a car park, and I believed, looking at it, was the teacher's car park, but no, that was a student car park. The teacher's car park was way smaller. And that was so astounding to me that it blew my mind. And you had auto shop. Oh, what I would give to be back there, get myself, I don't know, Camaro or something that said 28 or something like that, and do it up. Have a real American muscle car from then that I did up myself in auto shop. Oh man, it can never be done again. We'd never be there again. But yeah, that's kind of just beautiful. Such an amazing time to be there. But anyway, so the story that I was and attempting to impart, but I don't think I really got there. And that was, so my friend called me up, and I was reminded of how mature my friend is at his age, where it took me a lot longer to get to where he is. But compared to him now, in his young age, and where I am, I kind of I feel like that the old dude, the hermit living in a cave, who people come and visit from time to time. And they ask a question and they get an answer and leave, and that's the end of that, right? That interaction is done. That's kind of the way it felt. I felt considerably old talking to my friend today. But it's really good to hear from him, and I'm pleased that he's got a young family, and it's funny how your view on life changes when you have a young family, and how quickly you kind of need to mature. The next step in life after creating your own family, I suppose you do, is when you're the last person, you're the next person, the top of the family tree, who's still alive. That's another turning point, and I'm sorry if I've brought any hard memories back for anyone who lost their parents too early, through a catastrophe or what have you. It's just awful, and I appreciate it, because I've lost both of my parents to cancer, and it's not good. But I suppose what I heard from my friend describing me today was so nice, and I've got to say, he said, I always seem calm. It doesn't matter what's going on. I said that's on the outside. Maybe I'm not showing it, because you're always smiling, and you take it. You take it on the chin or whatever, right? Life throws things at you and you just keep going. I said, yeah. Listen. I said, you make a plan and you don't fear anymore. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what the challenge is. You can only change what you can change. If there's nothing about the situation you can change, then make a plan to negotiate through it, or around it, or avoid it, depending on what the problem is. I said, you have to do that. It's the first thing. I said, if you're riding a bicycle on a road and there's a pothole, you don't blunder into the pothole. I said, you've already done this. I said, you can do this. Everyone can do this. You break it up into tasks. You say, well, the first thing I've got to do is avoid the pothole. The next thing I've got to do is understand how I can avoid the pothole and remain safe. So is there anything else I need to avoid? Am I going to put myself in danger by avoiding the pothole? And all of this happens in a millisecond, and you're able to negotiate the pothole and continue going. But I said, very few people understand how much they had to break down in order to survive it. I said, the same thing happens, doesn't matter what it is. I said, you end up being like John Wick from the first movie, where there's 5 things that are all going to kill you, and you evaluate them all for which is the most, the top target, the one that's the most likely to kill you if you do nothing. So you work out who that one is, you disable them, and then move to the next. You don't have to shoot them. And John Wick, I think, was a great product of this. So you disarm the one that's the closest, that now you've got that person as a shield should you need it. And then you take the next person out and keep triaging until there's no longer any threats. I said, that's what we do, though. You're not going to leave one threat and fall into another. You should always be aware and be wary of everything that's happening. Be able to triage it, because the situations are in flux. They can change. You need to step it up, step it down, left, right, back, front, up, down, jump, duck. They're video game references. you need to do those things. Watch out the combination. I think it's up, down, down, left, left, jump, duck, duck, right? Don't do that. I'm just making that up because that was like a hack. I made up the hack, but there was a hack that involved a combination of those moves or similar moves, which then meant that you could just go left. I think it was in Mario or something, where you couldn't go left. It was a go right game. It was 2D, and you just jumped to the right. You ran to the right, but there was a way of being able to wait out the intro, and where there was a fault in the program where you could just kind of fall left and end up outside. We think it's called clipping. So you clipped outside of the environment, which is really cool. I wish life was like that. That would be like what you could imagine the quantum world would be like. And so anyway, so my friend was very kind and nice, and I think I spent about nearly 40 minutes on the phone during my lunch break. And it was really good to hear from him. But you know what? I think he's in a good place. He didn't really need my advice. There was no advice that I could give him. He's found his place. And I think everyone's also got that ability. So once you realize that you need to be present in your own life and you start making your own decisions and don't let someone else drive, that's where it is. That's when you can start to achieve things, and those little personal goals that you do build you up. They build your character, they build who you are, and they contribute to your future successes, because every one of those points becomes a learning point. It's like a staging or a save game. You can always go have those to fall back on should you get knocked down or defeated in something. You can still come back to that. Well, I did this and I was successful. You just build those up and they can get bigger. It's the same thing if you were to do that challenge where you buy something for $1 and you've got to sell it for $2. You've just doubled your money. But you don't spend the $2 and leave it at that. You buy something for $2 and try to sell it for $4. And if you keep doing that, I think it's 16 times or something, and you've got $1 million. I forget the number. And let me see if I could do it and cheat and work it out. So 1 plus 1 equals... No, I've got to do it squared. So 1 squared equals... No, I've got to start at 2. Yeah, that's what I got to do. No. Oh, I'm not going to have to do it manually. Goodness me. So 1 plus 1. Yes. Plus equals. That's right. Plus equals. Plus equals. There we go. So doubling your money, I think it's 16 times. Yeah, it's about that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So yeah, it's 20 times. Sorry guys, 20 times. So if you start with $1 and double your money by buying something and selling for twice as much, 20 sales later, you got $1 million. Isn't that nuts? Why didn't anyone tell me this when I was young? I would have really tried to do the right thing with that. So, yeah. Wow, I can't believe it. That's already the whole hour gone. And Mecky's, I don't know. I'm going to have to, I'll call him tomorrow and work out what's going on. But he didn't let me know that it was something wrong. I hope he's okay or his family's okay. So, because he recently had COVID, it's really not good these days. And I know that there was COVID brewing again in the US. I think 2 different variants, and they're, you know what? There's an election coming, and maybe they just want everyone to start doing mail-in votes in the US. And yeah, Good luck with that. They really don't want Trump to win. Let's put it that way. I think they're going to willing to be doing anything to stop it. So this has been Plato's Cave with Dave only. Coming up next, I don't know. You can catch Dave and Meki as Shiny Side Out on Sunday, 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern Time. And in the meantime, stay safe. Take care, everyone.